Hello, here we are on Breath to Breath, and I have the pleasure of introducing my guest, Kari Harendorf. Hello,
Oh,
Kari.
Karen, I'm sorry. It's
No,
Kari. It's Kari.
and I'm like, I didn't even check Kari. Down to Kari. Well, am I saying your last name right? Harendorf?
Yeah, Harendorf. Yeah,
Harendorf. Kari
you got it.
Harendorf. Harendorf. Kari Harendorf. Well, that's live for you. Kari, thank you so much for your humble acceptance of helping me navigate your name, but also for joining us in this conversation. I'll start with introducing you, and then we'll dive right in. So Kari is an Ayurvedic Health Counselor, a C-IAYT Yoga Therapist, an ERYT 500 Yoga Educator, and Reiki Master. She merges spiritual practice with asana and health science to help people feel better and their best. Oh, a teacher of teachers. Kari was on faculty for the 200-hour and 1,000-hour teacher trainings at the Kripalu schools of yoga and Ayurvedic and yoga therapy. She is a master trainer of Urban Zen's Integrative Therapy program and spent over a decade leading trainings in anatomy and Rodney Yee and Colleen Saidman Yee's 200-hour and 300-hour teacher trainings. Kari playfully focuses her teachings on helping students and teachers achieve precise anatomical alignment to awaken the body's innate intelligence and foster a sense of awareness and healing through yoga, nutrition, and healthy living. For the past several years, Kari has devoted herself to studying the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda and is currently working on attaining her Ayurvedic practitioner license. She loves and teaches about the body's inherent perfectly designed and its innate ability and desire to be healthy and harmonious. Kari believes, as the yoga scripture tells us, there is no separation of the body and mind, and the breath is the bridging aspect between them. You can find her on her weekly virtual studio where she teaches two-way live stream on Zoom, as well as her YouTube channel and Instagram for weekly yoga therapy pearls and mudra meditations. Today, Kari lives in the mountains of the Great Barrington in Massachusetts on a farm with her partner, 3 children, rescue dogs, cats, goats, horses, chickens, rooster, and a rabbit. And she grew up in Toronto and holds a BFA from the Tisch. I'm saying that right? Tisch. Yeah. Tisch School of the Arts at NYU. Kari, thank you so much for joining us. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you, Karen. I'm so happy to be here.
And also, since we already started on this path, one of my biggest fears is 1, blanking on someone's name, 2 is mispronouncing it. So I've already done that, so it can only go up.
It happens to me all the time, so it's really no big deal.
Oh, and I honestly, that's something that the breath has helped me with, because it's not if you mess something up, but it's when something hard happens, that's when you need it the most. So you just breathe, you keep going slow, you roll with it, and you keep saying their name, Kari, several times until you get it ingrained. But thank you for providing that amazing introduction. There's beyond so many little nuggets that I want to deep dive into. But as I ask with every guest I have, that first question is, what is your breath of origin? So before you even became all this, what was it about? How did you get here? How did you accomplish all these things? What led you on this path, whether known or unknown? And what is your breath of origin?
Oh, you told me that was the question that you ask everyone at the beginning, and then the question you close with, and then whatever happens from between A to Z is, unscripted and organic, and I love that.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, there's so many different ways you can answer that question, what's your breath of origin story? But really, as you're reading off that litany, you can tell that I'm definitely a seeker. And I like to know the why of things, right? So we were talking about Ayurveda, so it's very Pitta dosha is that perpetual student, and then the love of knowledge and stuff, and we can get into that later. But I think my real breath of origin is largely unconscious because it wasn't until so much later in life that I even became cognizant of the breath. In fact, it was well into my yoga teaching. I mean, I've been a yoga teacher for over 20 years. And I think for the first 5 of them, I spent more time worrying about the playlist that I was going to teach the vinyasa to than what was actually happening in my students' bodies, and, physically on an injury prevention or management level, and on a pranic level in terms of helping them breathe easier, which is really what breathing efficiently is. And so it wasn't until I had the pleasure and privilege of working with some amazing yoga teachers and pranayama teachers back before it was cool to study the breath. And I really spent a good decade just observing the breath. And to have that luxury, right? Time is a luxury and a non-renewable resource. But to have that much time to really become intimate with who I am as a breather, to really understand that. And in the yoga therapy module, which is the C-IAYT, is the yoga therapist accreditation, it's all about the layers of being, and it's the breath that is really the link between the psycho and the physical.
Ooh, I love that. The breath is the link between, what are the two that you said between?
So, when you're talking about breathing, it works on the psychophysical level. And in the Panchamaya Kosha model, with the 5 layers of being, you can think of it like an onion, like you peel away. And the most gross is the physical body. They call it the Annamaya Kosha. And in Sanskrit, the Anna, it literally translates as food body, right? So your grandmother that was like, you are what you eat, like, true.
Yeah.
And Ayurveda, they'll also say how you eat, when you eat, with whom you eat, and it keeps going deeper and deeper. But between the physical body and the mind, and like I had said in the bio, everyone is so concerned right now, and there's so much talk, which is wonderful, about the mind-body connection. But what the yogis said, and what the rishis, the seers, knew thousands of years ago, is they were never separate. And why we're in such dilemma now, and there's so much of an increase of dis-ease and mental dis-ease, right? Anxiety and depression, is because we've lost that connection, or we think that they're separate, or we spend way too much time on the physical, right? The Annamaya Kosha, without tending to true wellness within. And in that Panchamaya Kosha, the 5 layers of being, it's the physical body, and then it's the energetic body, which is called the Pranamaya Kosha. And then it's the Manomaya Kosha, which is the mind. And so you can think about that, the Pranamaya Kosha, and I'm sure that you are well familiar with the word prana, and for your listeners, prana is the life force, right? It is the thing that imbibes us with life. It's also vitality, it's vigor, it's,
our chi,
what that chi, yes, energy. That prana is the bridge between the physical and the mental.
Well, and that absolutely tracks in how I got to where I am too. It was that common thread that I started as I was still teaching, I was still treating in a very traditional speech and myofunctional therapy clinic, but I also was teaching at a studio, breathwork and meditation. And I just felt like these 2 Venn diagrams of like the world that I known, the Western world, and then the world that I was learning, this Eastern world, they slowly were merging, and there's this beautiful sliver in between. And that was the breath. And I mean, you might call it your airway in one setting, you might call it your prana in the other setting. It might look like stress and disease, or sleep apnea and anxiety and another one, or snoring. And it's the same thing. And I just learned that there's a better way to treat this, that it comprises both of them. And one of my favorite sayings is, this is a closed system, like this being the whole body, like all the way crown to toes. And they're all connected. Like I also like to think of it, I love trees. I think trees are fascinating, especially the branches, because it reminds me of the lungs and then the veins and the arteries. But essentially it's kind of like a family tree. Your breath, like your muscles, your fascia, it might have a direct, like a first cousin or a first cousin connection, or it might be like a second cousin once removed on your mother's side, but it's still connected. It is still connected, and you can support all of it once you start, again, to a nod to what you were saying, understanding they're not separate. They're not either or. It's not black or white. It is all that middle slice of the Venn diagram. It is all of those combination and fabric woven together. And that, honestly, if I do anything, if I can find a way, or just continue to reiterate that this is all one unit. They are not separate. They must be addressed simultaneously, or at least understanding of both, to have respect for both, knowing that they both play a vital role. And that is evident in your answer, and clearly the way that you live your life and treat clients and students. It's cool, and I love hearing that.
Yeah, I mean, this is where life happens. It
I
happens
know.
in the body, and it's
I
going to
know.
show up, and it's going to affect
Yeah.
the breath.
Yeah.
Right. But it's also, you talked about that Venn diagram, right? It's also the key to bring the two back together. And that's, what is interesting to me as a yoga educator, as a yoga therapist, as someone who, Reiki Master, that's all energy. That's the pranamaya kosha, right? The pranamaya kosha is like, if you go and get acupuncture, like that's the level it works on, right? And to bring the mind and the body back into harmony.
Yeah.
And you were talking about that Venn diagram. You said whether it's sleep apnea or anything else, or a narrow breathing way, like, okay, so how does that affect the mind, or how does that affect the body, right? Tightness, the way we perpetually move through life or hold ourselves, will create a restriction in the physical body, like in the muscles. And if that's a muscle, an accessory muscle of breathing, that's going to have an effect on respiration. Or whether it's a mental, I'm scared, or some trauma that's lodged of being scared or being anxious, again, that's going to affect how we hold ourselves. That's also going to affect the breath. And so when we can become conscious, because really prana and consciousness are two sides of the same coin, when we can become conscious of how we're breathing, we can change. I mean, that's the transformation.
Yeah. Well,
right?
And like change and resilience, and even epigenetics, like those are the things that get me super excited. And I have a self-deprecating story to tell you about Kripalu, basically to about me,
Yeah.
Kripalu, just to say, like, change is possible. So before I even got into breathing and breath work and meditation, I'd done yoga before, but man, I've been struggling. I had taken Adderall for over a decade and was off Adderall. My mom, understanding that I was like not in a great spot, got one of her other girlfriends and daughters. So we went on a mother-daughter trip to Kripalu, and beautiful location. I mean, I literally am like looking, when can I go back? So I've only been once, so I need to return. But I was just not healthy, and I was not living a beautiful life, and I was struggling, and I was still smoking, and it's a non-smoking facility. I literally I would wake up at like 7 a.m., hike a mile, go smoke a cigarette, and then come back. And I'm like, what am I even doing? But I keep looking back at Kripalu and thinking, I'm going to go back a much different person and change. But it almost is like such a stark reminder of you can start anywhere. You just have to start. And then that's how you start to change, as you make little, small, subtle changes. And in starting of, this is my segue. So that was the Kripalu. My segue is to making small, subtle changes is I would love to learn more about Ayurvedic and Ayurvedic medicine. And true story, I was telling you before we started, I had a girlfriend ask me, where do you start to learn about Ayurvedic practices? And I literally did not know what to tell her. So I would love maybe just in your vast knowledge, a slight overview of what is Ayurveda, what is Ayurvedic practices, a little bit about the doshas and maybe some of the frameworks.
Sure. I mean, that's again.
I know that's a massive question.
How long is this conversation? Well, to answer your friend, I would say, Sri Swami Google has all the answers. And, we live in an age of open source information. This is not something that is handed down through a lineage or kept, only for the Brahmins and the priests and the elites. Everything is available. You can also send her to me. I'd love to meet her. But the most important thing is our own curiosity, right? And like you said now, so hindsight, right? Looking back at that first visit to Kripalu, you were like, oh my God, I was smoking. Was it even before they even had coffee in the morning? I mean, that was really, you can see people really facing their addictions and like, this place is awful. They don't even have coffee. Like they have coffee there now. It's not good, but they have coffee. But interesting for you now saying like, oh, now I'm going to go back. And, you're coming back to the same place, but you're different.
Oh.
And so it's a real way to say, okay, so now I'm marking, I was here. Now I'm here much more you're doing what you love, and that shows up, and you're at home in yourself. And again, we can link that back to owning the breath. Yeah. The French expression is like maître de soi, the master of self. And if you are master of your breath, nothing can throw you off. Yeah. Right. But if you're not, you mispronounce someone's name, it can ruin your day. Right. And you ruminate on it, and it's just like,
I'm keeping that in there, by the way, because it makes me laugh. It makes me laugh. But you're right.
To answer your question, so Ayurveda is really, you probably heard it says being touted as the sister science of yoga.
Ooh, I like that.
And you can also say that yoga and Ayurveda are also not separate. Yoga is a tool of Ayurvedic medicine, right? Okay. Yoga is a tool in yoga therapy. We will prescribe asana, we'll prescribe breathing practices, we'll prescribe mantras to recite, or mudras, like hand gestures or body gestures to do. All of that is Ayurveda. All of Ayurveda is not all yoga, right? Like yoga is a slice of Ayurveda, and yoga just happens to be, again, what took off here in the West. And I believe it was the doorway in, right? Because whether you started doing yoga because it was offered in your gym and you like it gave me strength in my upper body or toned my arms, or I got like yoga butt, the good kind, not the bad kind that like tears the hamstring attachment. Like that's a doorway in. And then maybe you notice, oh, I just feel better from doing this, right? It's like truth is one, paths are many. So what was, like you said, what's your origin story of the breath? It's like, well, what was your way in? So for yours, I wasn't even conscious. And I think that largely from your mission and your work in the world, aligning with mine, is to really bring this information to everybody so they can take care.
Oh my God. Yes.
Like take care of yourself, because we have to take care of so many others, right? As mothers, as nurses, as teachers, as partners, as parents, as children, we're all asked to shoulder so much. And so we have to be able to hold ourselves upright. Wow.
Honestly, I wasn't even thinking we were going to go in. Actually, I never know what direction these are going to go into, but I love just talking about the concept of self-care. And you're right. It boggles me how little we emphasize of like, you have to make sure you are okay. Like the responsibility lies within yourself. And I think once you get it, you know it, and you do it, and then you model it for others. But that was a really hard concept for me to grasp.
Oh my God, the oxygen mask, put it on yourself before you put it on anyone else, like they say in the planes. I used to be like, God, that's so selfish. But then, like when I was little, I'm like, take care of me first, Mom. But it wasn't until, and for many years, I put everyone else first, that it was like, there's going to be nothing left. And I think burnout is a really prevalent issue in our time. And, COVID didn't make it better, it made it worse.
It made it.
Now there's no boundary. You're just, you work in your pajamas, you work at your kitchen table, you work 24/7, you're taking care of the kids. It was like, it made it worse. And we can see that in the mental health of our young and of our old, right?
I know. I love talking about what do we need to unlearn to relearn the things that take care of ourselves, and youth need to unlearn so much less than we do, and they can grasp these concepts.
It's just been decades of unlearning.
Oh God, I know.
I'm just further along.
Yeah, it is.
And so you're talking about self-care. I literally moved to the Berkshires in 2013, and I like the new year because I like the fresh start. I like the reflective aspect of, December, and really seeing, where you can get a new calendar and you can really like map out what you want the year to be. And so I have this word that every year I'm like, what's my word? What's my intention for? And intention was one of my words, like back in 2019. But it wasn't until I moved up here that it was like, I had to do like radical self-care. And I literally had to use the word radical because otherwise it wouldn't have happened. I needed to radicalize self-care, and to tie that back into Ayurveda. I mean, Ayurveda is an entire system that is literally based on self-care and taking care of all aspects of yourself. And to go into like the introduction of Ayurveda, in the simplest terms, you can think that the entire universe is made up of 5 great elements. Okay. And there's some overlay to the Chinese medicine and that 5 elements, but also some differences. And so it's earth, water, fire, air, and space. Okay. And so from those 5 elements, they will combine in different combinations to form what you would ask me for, to form the doshas. Okay. And so kapha or kapha, it's pronounced either way, is earth and water. So the most gross, right? Like the anamaya kosha, it's earth and water. And pitta dosha is made up of fire and water. So water is in both of those. But vata dosha is air and space. And I know you're smiling because you had shared that you are predominantly vata dosha.
And so just to make sure we're all on the same page, how would you define what a dosha is for someone that's unfamiliar with this?
Sorry, my dog, someone is here. My dog just got up and left the room. And so a dosha, you could translate that as like a biological humor or an energetic blueprint. It literally means at fault. And so it's basically your constitution. So everyone has all 3 doshas. So the 5 elements combine to make 3 doshas. Everyone has all 3 doshas in them because that's really what governs life and all the processes that are necessary as an organism. But you will have them in different proportions. Because you ever make the colored sand? You ever go to a fair and it has the colored sand and you pour them into a jar and you make the different layers and the patterns. And so everyone could be a colored jar, a jar full of colored sand, but they would have a different proportion of kapha versus pitta versus vata. And so if you're predominantly vata dosha, most people have 2, like a dominant one and then a closer second and then a less third, right? But everyone has all 3. Some people are monodoshic, very much like I'm predominantly pitta. And then Very few people are what's called tridoshic, where they have all three pretty equal. Now, those people are very, it's much easier for them to be balanced all the time.
Okay.
So the state of the health of a person relies on the balance of those doshas. So even though you have more vata than pitta or than kapha, all three of them will accumulate and pacify according to what's happening, because you are a reflection of great nature.
Yeah.
Right? We're animals. We are natural beings. So we are affected by the pull of the moon. We're affected by the weather outside. And so right now we're in winter, which is vata season. And so everyone's vata, because also remember, vata is the one with air and space. So vata is the king of the doshas because it's the only one that moves. Pitta and kapha are lame. They can't do anything on their own, right? And if you think about pitta is fire, you need air to fan the flames, right? So you need the vata. Because vata is the one that moves, it's pretty much the first one that can get out of whack. Yeah. For everyone, it'll get out of whack in the fall and winter because that is vata season. Okay. And so for someone who's predominantly vata dosha, like you need to take extra care in the fall and the winter to protect that vata from getting too elevated, because it's going to increase naturally anyway.
That tracks. that tracks. And I was just thinking, maybe like just for some reference points, I'm just thinking immediately of the Enneagram. And while the Enneagram is more like our personalities, but it's something along the lines of like what are your characteristics? What do those characteristics look like? And it's basically giving you 3 different profiles of the way that you act and your health, and ways to calm and also to heal and to soothe. It's almost like the symptom list and the remedy list at the same time. It kind of gives you what's going on and how you support those. And I love the idea of vata being air and space, because I feel like that's also breath. Like that's the breath, and that's
absolutely.
And I'm like, yes, I like all the sounds of this. It also tracks with like how my emotions have been like all over the place this season. And it's just beyond interesting to me. And I feel like when I'm learning something new about myself, I want to explore all the different avenues and resources. And in a way, I'm almost testing it to see, like, does it track? Does it land? Is it accurate for me? And Ayurvedic, from what you're saying and what little I know about it, as well as like what I've learned about pranayama and the different teachings of yoga and about the limbs of yoga, it lands. I just keep seeing these similar patterns pop up in different languages, different contexts. And this is one that I think is a great tool. And these are all tools. The breath is a tool, yoga is a tool, Ayurvedic medicine is a tool. The doshas are tools to help us better understand the human experience. And ultimately, when you can understand, and it's an experience, it's meant to be lived, it's meant to be felt, it's meant to be that you're not broken, you're okay, that there's nothing that's wrong with you. This is the way it goes. And when you have the strength from the inside out, when it comes from that prana, that chi, that life force, the breath, that knowing and feeling of our body, it doesn't matter what's happening out here, because the strength is the inside out. You're not gaining your strength or your worth from the outside in, because this, if the past couple of years haven't taught us anything, this can change like that. So
yeah, and not to be ruled by those subconscious patterns.
yes,
right? When you are in control of the breath and you are in control of the mind. And to go back to the Ayurvedic, there's 2 main laws in Ayurveda. Like increases like.
Ooh, I love that.
Right? So if you're feeling a little bit stressed out, you have your anxiety, you're feeling ungrounded, if you're going to get in a plane and fly across the country, you're going to increase that feeling.
Oh, you mean like going to Argentina?
eating, so the different, because there's, so the two elements will make that dosha, air and space. Air and space have qualities, right? Air and space is dry, it's rough, it's subtle, it's clear, it's mobile. So if you're going to do things with those qualities, right? Horseback riding, flying, eating crackers, eating salad, right? Vata is cold. It said you're like cold. That's going to elevate the vata even more. Fall, wind is kicking up. The air gets rough. The leaves dry up and fall down. That's all vata season. And so the counter of that, because really you're talking about these practices that are tools. Well, you have to know which tool, when to use it. Otherwise, a hammer is no good for you if you really need a screwdriver. It's not going to help you, right? And so the remedy is that opposites bring balance. So one of the first things that happen when vata goes out of balance is your skin gets dry. Your lips get dry, your nails get dry, right? And so you're not going to do a dry exfoliation on rough skin. You're going to do the opposite. You're going to do a warm oil massage, and you're going to let it absorb into the skin. You're going to eat foods that are oily, that are unctuous, that are warm to combat that cold, rough, dry. Right? You're going to do pranayama. You're going to put sandbags on you. You're going to lie down and rest. You're going to be under a weighted warm blanket. Like those are things that will balance vata. Because when we first go out of balance, like you had said, thinking about how it lands for you, we all have innate intelligence, right? The guy had said, it's like, everyone watching this is perfect. You're inherently perfect. And you were created in that perfection. Yeah. Life takes us out of balance. Life can throw us off kilter, can disorganize us, right? Can leave us feeling disjointed. But when we first go out of balance, we still have that intelligence to, this doesn't seem right. Something is off here. Yeah. Right? When you were first, if vata is elevated, you're going to want to wear a sweater. You're going to want to put a scarf around your neck. You're going to want to drink tea and soups and broths. That's what's going to bring you back to balance. Now, if that imbalance has gone on for a long time, just like a physical alignment, right? I teach anatomy. Like the longer a misalignment goes uncorrected, the worse it becomes. I just think of everyone with their forward head posture. You lose that innate intelligence. Yeah. And when the cells, because every cell has its own intelligence according to Ayurveda, when the cells become perverted, they crave the things that take us further out of balance. And then you could think about that as like the root of addiction.
Yeah. No. All right. Two things that I'm just thinking of from what you just said. One, just to kind of bring context, because I feel like you and I very much understand when we're talking about control of the breath. But for those that are maybe new to even like breathing as a practice, what it means to me, and then I would love to hear what it means to you. It's the awareness of that you can change it, awareness of how deep it goes, how fast or how slow you're breathing. Does it feel labored? Does it feel easy? Do you feel satisfied, or do you feel like you're unable to get that full breath? And essentially what I think of when you're talking about control of the breath, it just means that based on where you are from a physiological or emotional standpoint, that you can shift to change your breathing mechanics, meaning maybe you are mouth breathing, upper chest breathing, shoulders, that you can start to slow and relax your shoulders, rest your tongue to the roof of your mouth, close your lips, relax your face, your jaw, your forehead, breathing with ease in and out of the nose, filling up your lungs, letting your diaphragm fully contract. Easy, full, deep, slow. That's what it means to me. And then over time, that becomes your pattern. So that's what your body just knows how to do, kind of rifting off the inherent intelligence of our body. And is that similar to what you're thinking of when you talk about being in control of your breath?
Yes. And
yes, please, and yes,
it's like,
yes, and
like first rule of improv for all the actors out
no,
there.
I
Yes.
want the yes, and that's what I
And
know. I want to know what you know.
no, like I said, I spent 10 years
Yeah.
lying down doing simple breath awareness with sandbags, with the little beanie babies, the little beanbag stuffed animals, because also I would teach to like children and stuff, and putting that on your belly, putting that on your ribs, putting that on your upper chest. In pranayama, which are the breathing practices in yoga, or people that go to a yoga class or do a teacher training, and then they start by learning pranayama, which is manipulation. In a lot of schools, you're manipulating the breath. And you had said so intelligently, we need to unlearn and undo things. So if you're already a restricted breather, you're a mouth breather, you're a shallow breather, you're not breathing efficiently, why would I put another restraint or a pattern or a control over that? So now I have two problems, right?
Yeah.
Unlearn, and we unlearn something by becoming conscious of it. Because so many of it, like, where do we learn how to breathe? Well, we learn how to breathe by our primary caretakers, right? So we'll pattern after a mother, a father, or a teacher, a nanny. But it actually goes back, and there's a lot of research on this, to how your mother was a breather and you were in utero.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So you can, I mean, we could spend hours just talking about that.
Yeah.
And that's also in Ayurveda, like really the prakriti, which is the constitution, going back to the doshas, is determined by the field of the womb, the seed from the father, the seed from the mother, right? And the emotional life of them, and then of the mother all throughout the pregnancy. Yeah. And so if there was some trauma, that's why they say, for pregnancy, pregnant women shouldn't even look at anything violent.
Yeah.
Because that's how we take life in, through the sense organs.
Oh my God. Okay. I have a very, very interesting.
I don't even know if I answered your question yet.
You did. And I don't even know what the second point, I can't remember the second point, what I wanted to ask you, but this is something I've been thinking about, me and you talking about the emotional state of the parents. Okay. Are you ready for a hypothetical? That's also like a brain teaser that I don't know the answer to.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have my eggs frozen. I'm 38 and I had them frozen at 34. I'm so grateful that I got them pre-geriatric age. But thinking about the I know this is out there, but I think about these things and I don't know who to ask, so I'm asking you. Thinking about the emotional state I was at 34 versus 38. And just for reference, Kripalu was probably like 32. Maybe it was more like 31, 32, somewhere around there. I just wonder, I'm like, from an Ayurvedic standpoint, hypothetically, could the emotional state of the egg that I harvested when I was 34 still hold true? And can I overcome that from the environment, the wonderful, loving environment, if said egg was ever used by me, who this is under the assumption that I'm doing so much better emotionally, which I feel confident that I am. And I know that is out there, but I literally have thought this in my mind so many times, and I just have never even known who I could possibly ask. And I'm just curious your thoughts on that. There's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is a right or wrong answer.
Oh, there is. Okay.
And I'm not, I mean, I'm by no means an expert. So not
No,
IVF. I've worked with a lot of women who are dealing with infertility from a yoga therapy standpoint and from a dosha standpoint. But I would say that it will have an impact, right? Because that was the egg, that was the seed that was harvested at the time. And yes, and the field in which that grows. So everything you do to grow that seed will absolutely give you a leg up, right?
Yeah, I know. I think it's so interesting to think about what's better, to have a healthier emotional state or um, a younger age of the egg that was harvested. And I don't know. I think it all goes into play because we're both in. It's not black or white. It's not
Yeah,
gray.
I mean, I think that's a continuum because there becomes a point where there's diminishing returns, right? Like I'm 52 and I'm like in a great emotional state, but I wouldn't necessarily want to harvest an
I
egg.
know. Thank you for going down that rabbit hole with me. I just
To
want
go back to your question and in terms of what the breathing practice is, because until you know how you breathe, you don't know if you breathe well.
right.
And most people are not breathing well. And you can just correlate that to the proliferation of anxiety and depression in our culture today, right? And so what I would really recommend is lying down on the ground. And this is how I teach all my students, is first just anapana, breath awareness, lying down on the ground, because it takes so much muscular effort just for us to sit upright, and most of us don't sit well, and so we'll come right into that patterning. And when you lie down, you have a chance for your spine to lengthen, your head moves back, right? Thanks to the phone, we all have forward head posture, thanks to the computer. And that is such an impact on our breath, right? So we can't be efficient breathers if we're stuck like this all day long, right? Like you can just see the top of the spit is not oriented well. And as soon as the head comes forward, the chest goes down. The diaphragm is inhibited because this is where the diaphragm attaches to the lowest ribs and goes all the way around the back. If the ribs are flexed in, it's like squeezing a garden hose. So the head is forward, and if that's squeezed there, this is the pathway. You talked about a tree, right? The lungs are like upside down tree.
They are. They are.
So beautiful. I mean, the picture of an anatomical picture of a lung is like mind blowing, right? But to loop it back again, it just sees that we are a microcosm of the macrocosm out there. So by lying down, it takes the pressure off of us. And so much of our inefficiency of breathing is because we're putting more pressure and tension into the system. Yeah. So postural tension by muscles and fascia that are constricted and tight, mental tension, stress from our life, right? So until you can, let's just level the playing field and lay down, put some weight on the thighs so the lungs have a levity and a lightness, right? Use everything.
Yeah, all the tools.
Use everything.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a matter of observing what is. So what is true and real? Like, where do you initiate the breath from? Does the belly move first? Does the chest move first? If you were to follow the inhalation, just like as an observer, and observation is action, right? Just to observe where that inhalation goes first, because you will feel the parts of the body that are really open and moving and receiving the breath. And then you may say, oh, it's almost like there's like this is velvet roped off. This is a dark corner. No one goes up to the attic or down to the basement. There's parts in our body, from physical trauma, from emotional trauma, from what your job is, maybe the way that you hold yourself all the time for whatever the work that you do, that are going to limit the way the breath is able to move and the way that the muscles are able to coordinate. And so you just watch. And we know in science, anything that is observed changes. So just by watching the breath, your breath is going to be easier, fuller, less effortful, hopefully. Yeah. And then you begin to take the mind, this is what I like to do, to the places where it's not moving, because as the yogis say, where chit goes, prana flows. So where the mind goes energy follows chit, it follows the mind. So then you begin to create this bigger container, right? Because the torso is the container, the kambuk is the Sanskrit word, but really the container is from the sole of the foot all the way up to the roof of the mouth. Yeah. Like that's really the cylinder that we're breathing on. And when you talk about the descent of the diaphragm, well, it's also happening in the arch of the foot. Yes. It's also happening in the pelvic floor, right? Yes. And it's, 22,000 times a day on average, you have a chance to massage the intestines on the descent and massage the heart on the exhale, right? Because a diaphragm that has the full excursion down and up could rise all the way to the level of T5, the vertebra in the back.
Yeah. No, honestly, that right there, that's probably been one of the most rewarding parts about these conversations. And really, my whole goal of Breath to Breath is just to have more meaningful conversations and then put it in a platform so that it can be shared, because I want the yes ands. I want the both ands. I want to know the different perspectives, because when you're talking about the whole domino effect of the body from the forward head posture, when I think forward head posture, I automatically know there's something wrong with the airway, but it also, now I'm starting to realize like it means there's something that possibly could even be wrong with the way that you're standing, like the feet. And essentially the tongue is in my opinion, one of the most overlooked aspects of what you can do and change. But even keeping your tongue up lets me know, all right, then I've at least got an open airway. And then when we start doing forward head posture, this makes me laugh, because the one thing that I remember the most from dysphagia, which is in graduate school, dysphagia is the study of dysfunctional swallowing. So we would call it a chin tuck, and you would tuck your chin as you swallowed because it blocked off your airway so you wouldn't aspirate. And essentially, this is what we're doing chronically as just a symptom of overusing screens and lack of awareness about our posture. But what we're simultaneously doing is closing off our airway. But I digress.
No, you progress. It's just that we're threading it back. It's
I know.
Golden thread.
Oh my gosh, I can tell. Like, yeah, you're such a wealth of knowledge, and I think you do a beautiful job of explaining these very, very complex. Like, I asked you, hey, what is Ayurvedic medicine? You're like, oh my gosh, but you've done a beautiful job of at least like starting to lay the path. And I already have a million notes of what I'm going to be looking up and researching next. But I want to make sure that that we praise and highlight some of the wonderful things that you've accomplished. So briefly, tell us about Katana Yoga, which you told me before we started recording. It's been around for about 15 years, and that is yours. That is your unique trademark style of yoga, right?
No, I've been teaching Katana Yoga for 15 years, but Katana...
Oh my God. Okay, please. Correct.
I've been teaching Katana Yoga for about 15 years.
Okay.
But Katana Yoga has been around. It was started by the founder. Her name is Naveen Mishan, and she is a mystic. Okay. And so she started it about 40 years ago. And really, from walking around, she would walk behind people and pattern the way they were walking to understand what was going on in their body. I mean, I do that with people because I work with people who are dealing with injuries or recovering from certain things, but it also works with the breath. Got it. Right? You can know someone's state of mind by mimicking how they're holding their body, because right away you see how the breath is able to move freely in and out or not. And Katana Yoga, for me, was the method that proved everything I'd learned in my yoga therapy program, everything I was interested in and learning through Ayurveda. It's based on Taoism. So if a method is smart, it will prove every other method that's out there.
Yeah.
Right? They're not actually in contradiction to anything. And so this was what enabled me to bring all these different modalities that I had like talk about going down the rabbit hole and really studying and liking. And it was like, so this was like the hub of the wheel. Katona yoga is the hub that enables me to bring all of it together and really deliver this knowledge in a holistic way.
So Katona yoga is a teaching methodology or a framework of practicing the asanas and lifestyle and those
Yeah,
things.
it's a hatha yoga practice that really merges mind and body and breath.
Awesome. What else can I you know what? We're recording on Friday the 13th, so I'm just gonna say it.
I know, right?
It's that, and we had a full moon last week. All right, we'll just say it's there. This has been beyond lovely of a conversation, and Kari, I have one last one for you. If
Yeah.
it's, what does a deep breath mean to you?
Well, as an anatomy teacher,
Yeah.
deep is a direction in the body.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so for me, I know I never instruct take a deep breath. That was instilled into me by Rodney Yee. And when I would teach teacher trainings and teach about the breath, like in the module where I would teach about the diaphragm and the spine, I would tell my students, your homework is to go out and ask 10 people on the street, not yoga students, just anyone, to take a deep breath and watch what they do. Because most people will translate exactly a deep breath as to maximum effort. And that's not what it is at all. And you'll see when they take a deep breath, they actually, their nose sucks in, their eyes bug out. It's really like a pressure. It literally it looked like a cartoon. So, this pressurizing that happens in the brain, in the sense organs, in the head, and the breath doesn't actually penetrate, right? Their shoulders are shrug up. Where taking a deep breath, I actually don't even say take a breath, because it's far more interesting for me. And I think far more in line with what the universe wants is to receive a breath. Right? What is the energetic difference of having to take something as if it weren't yours or you didn't have the right to it?
Yeah.
Versus just being open to receive. And so many people who don't feel like they're in the right space or they belong or they have the right to be here on this planet.
Oh, that's good. I mean, like the
universe wants you to breathe. And so taking a deep breath, no, just exhale and be open to grace, right? And on the nitty-gritty anatomical, when you release the air in your lungs, when you exhale, the vacuum that's created, the pressure differential, like, oh, you don't have to do anything. The air rushes in. The prana rushes in. The chi rushes in on that. And really to be efficient, undo. That's how you can begin to undo. And that's how you begin to breathe well. And then be well. To take it back, to circle it all the way back.
Breathe well, be well. What? Oh, Kari, that answer is multi-layered. It's beautiful. It's textured. I wrote full breath versus deep breath. Like maybe that would even be one start to like go from there. But then when you're talking about taking versus receiving, a big focus of what I've been trying to shift is from the yang into the yin, like the doing instead of being. And you just, like we don't have to take anything. It is ours inherently, and our body knows how to do it. We've forgotten, or we've dispatterned our knowing, our we've forgotten.
We're human beings, not human doings. We got to stop it.
Oh my God, that might take a little bit longer to permeate into our culture, but we'll start one conversation, one breath at a time.
One breath at a time.
Kari, this has been such a pleasure. Make sure and tell us what's your Instagram handle, your website, how can people find you?
Sure. Thank you so much. So my Instagram it's really just, you can find me by my name. It's at Kari Harendorf. My website is kariharendorf.com. And through that, you can click on my catalog. So I have a live classes 6 days a week with other teachers, with Ayurvedic practitioners, with master trainers of Oxygen Advantage, a lot of breath work, pairing breath with asana. And also you can do a subscription model. So I have access to hundreds of recorded videos, mini practices, and full length classes on that through my website, kariharendorf.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure until we chat again.
Thank you so much, Perrin. Thank you.
Bye.